Welcome to REHAU Academy on Air. This podcast is a way for us to present non-technical information related to REHAU in a Q&A format with industry experts. I'm Max Rohr, the REHAU Academy Manager for North America.
My guest today is Aune. Eric is the owner of Aune Plumbing, LLC, based in Minnesota. He also edits and contributes content to mechanical-hub.com. The content, specifically the photos that Eric shares from job site visits, will make contractors laugh, smile, and sometimes shake their heads in disbelief. He has a great pulse of the industry, and I'm happy to have him as a guest. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, thanks, Max.
So you have been an industry trainer for over a decade. I've got a couple questions as far as training goes within our industry. So in general, what will the plumbing and heating workforce look like in 20 years?
It's a good question. I think I would have to start my answer out with how I think the construction industry is going to change and how that might affect the workforce. I know that in my about 20 years in the industry, working as a plumber, pipe fitter, I've seen a lot of processes and materials that we use change over time. And really the job site has changed quite a bit. Before, when I started out as a younger, 18, 19-year-old guy, we had either, whether it was commercial or residential job sites, just filled with, loads of guys and girls working with the tools, very chaotic. And over time, I've really taken notice that has changed quite a bit. So what I mean by that is we've got new processes, whether it be whole bathroom groups or piping configurations prefabbed off of site so that we can have less people required to install those systems on site. And we've got new materials like PEX that is now being used in commercial applications or other type of piping materials like pressed copper fittings or iron pipe that don't require the same amount of tools or really kind of set up processes in place on site. So what I think what that's done already and will continue to do as technology improves on these systems is we will probably see less people on the job, and those workers, those skilled tradespeople, will probably have to. I envision them to be required to know more about the construction process and how to work more efficiently with less people. So really, ultimately, I think the workforce is going to be leaner, but more educated, or we're going to demand them to be more educated.
Yeah, and I think that just looking at the amount of things that in other industries are already automated, I would say that the construction industry has some of that automation, but I imagine in 20 years there'll be a lot of machines sitting next to a contractor doing a lot of the bits and pieces of a task for them. So it's more just the technical expertise to put everything together and know that this should go this direction for this reason. But yeah, that's a good point, that it's definitely not as chaotic as at a job site as opposed to when you had 8 guys lifting a piece of sheetrock into place right next to 3 guys doing some other task in the same room.
Yeah, and you bring up automation, and that's very interesting because a lot of the tools we're working with now, although we're working with different piping systems, different fixtures, what have you, but a lot of the design whether the development and design in the material we're working with, whether it's piping or drain waste and vent or water distribution or electronics and electrical work, controls, things like that on a boiler. A lot of what's gone into the manufacturing of those products has taken out the need for a real understanding and from the individual installing them. And really, I think what the reason behind that is so that less errors can be made. And so if we're automating processes in the building environment, whether it's constructing a wall, for the carpenters or the concrete guys, whatever, iron workers, or if it's a piping system, if we can automate or take some of the human error out of that, I think that that's one of the goals of our industry, because it will speed processes up and, by eliminating potential, errors.
And sometimes it just allows the barrier for entry to be a little bit lower too. That if you can explain how to use your new tool to a novice and have them do it right out of the gate, that's better than some tool that you have to have 3 years of formal training to use, and then there's still a pretty good chance that you don't have everything calibrated right. So, yeah, I think that that's a manufacturing question that everybody has is, okay, how do we build this in a way that you can't do it wrong? And I think that everybody's always surprised that somebody will find a new way to not do it right. But for the most part, that's good design to start with, to make sure that your tool is most applicable for the job and easy to understand.
Yeah, I think that the companies, the manufacturers that are doing that, I think everybody's trying that right now, but I think the ones that succeed are the ones that we're going to see the most of in the future on the job site, their products and their tools and their processes.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the questions I have too that's related to that, let's say in the future there's some new tool that a contractor comes across. Do you think that they're going to look for training on how to put that together in a formal classroom setting? Or do you think that we're headed towards more of a, let me find an Instagram video or a quick photo of how to do that? Do you think it's going more towards the technology side of things, or will there always be a place for that formal classroom?
I think that there are different type of learners, and then people have, different levels of access or familiarity with technology. So maybe there's a place for both, although today there's a lot of information being shared socially, whether, like you said, Instagram is a great, or YouTube, the great examples of how to find out how, to get information on a process or a tool, or, how to fix your car, but people are so willing to share in my, my experience, oftentimes really good, solid information for free. So I think that I only see that growing. I really do. I see that people are in need of this information themselves, and when they are able to share with others, that they're willing to do so.
And I think that the marketing message there too is a little bit more genuine sometimes too, that if REHAU as a company says, hey, we've developed this new power tool and it's great, that's worth something. I think if a contractor who is, maybe at first even skeptical of it, uses it and loves it and shares some, personal case study of, why they like it on social media, that's as good as it gets. There's no better advertising than a nice testimonial. And I think that that's what social media can be great for, is it gives people a platform to, participate in the message with something like that.
Yeah. And in the very least, it's a springboard to finding out more information or just becoming aware. I find out about new products all the time, and to be completely honest with you, it's almost never by chance on a job site. It's almost always a product that I'm not currently working with that maybe I should look further into because I've seen people share information online about it.
Yeah, I guess if you're the plumbing and heating guy at a job site, you're probably not going to see 20 other examples of similar type of work there. So being able to plug into a network where you can see what a job site in Alaska and what a job site in Florida, have in common and don't have in common as far as a boiler installation goes, that's definitely unique to a platform like that, like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So in the trainings that you have done in the past, when did you find that the students you were teaching were most engaged?
Well, everybody's got a different learning style, but I think a lot I think the majority of people that are coming up in the trades, any type of trade, are tactical learners. So right away, I know when I'm building, a class where I'm putting it together from scratch, or I'm getting ready for, to repeat a class I've taught in the past. I know that hands-on applications of what we're talking about are going to probably are going to get the most attention. They're going to have the most interaction. I think that students, whether it's somebody that's seasoned and been in the industry for 30 years, or somebody that's, just out of high school and trying, or switching careers and trying to figure this whole thing out, a lot of these people are very receptive to the process of doing, the job with their hands and learning from that aspect. And then I do get a lot of interest when I can share examples. So, for instance, when I'm teaching a very basic introduction class to hydronics, I know that the majority of the people in my class are probably don't have a ton of experience with it. And in that case, I can show them what we're talking about with pictures of past installations versus just giving them a bunch of, meaningless text to look at, or even just pictures of components of a system. If I can show them, actual installations, whether it's video or pictures from jobs that I've done in the past, I get a lot more comprehension from my class that way.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a time and a place for a conceptual, engineering drawing of a system, but until you kind of figure out how that would look in a real room made out of real materials, it's a little bit different animal.
Yeah, I that, like you said, there's a time and a place. I mean, we have to rely on schematics and blueprints and such to make these classes work. It's a big part of it, and it's also integral in fully understanding how to do these jobs and what we're up against. But I can watch a lot of people's eyes kind of roll in the back of their head and heads start to nod when it's they've been working outside for 8 hours or more, and it's 5 degrees here in Minnesota, and then I get them into a warm classroom and they're still wearing their their insulated coveralls, and they're just fighting falling asleep in the first place. So the hands-on stuff is really, really important for my classes.
So in general, how would we convince young people that a career in hydronics is cool? So if somebody brings their son or daughter to one of those classes with them just after school, or while they're out of school during the summer or something, how do we get these people interested in switching from web designer to hydronics? Even though web designer is important in its own right, how do we make hydronics cool?
Well, that's a tough question, really, no matter what trade we're talking about. I think that we have to identify people that have a desire to work with their hands and to create kind of something from nothing. That's one part of the trade that I talk to young people all the time about. And whether somebody's really technical and can memorize stats and figures, and maybe history class was enjoyable to them because they can, they understand, concepts and timelines, or whether math and science is their thing because they like to experiment or prove an equation. If you can identify somebody, if they can at all wrap their head around the idea that the type of work they are going to do involves taking really just a whole bunch of parts and pieces and creating something from that's maybe it's it can be looked at as a working piece of art, and that benefits somebody else, then we've got somebody to work with. So a lot of times when you've got people considering it, whether it's hydronics or plumbing or heating, of any sort, I like to show them if they're interested in technologies, for example, I like to emphasize that we use a lot of that. We use computer programs to help, design our systems. There's math involved, if that's always math involved in every trade, really, but if that's something that they enjoy. And so that we can show them that, what we're building isn't, we're not just collecting a paycheck at the end of the week. There's actually some pride and enjoyment in this stuff. It's just, it's tough. That's a tough one. I mean, getting anybody to look at the trades in the first place is an uphill battle today in 2017. So I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that. I wish I did, because I think that we could all act on it and make a difference, because we are at a point in time, and have been for quite some time, that it's hard to get people interested in what we're doing.
I think that that's a good point too, that they have to at some point like the task of the project management part of it, and the dedication that it takes to make something not only function well but look really cool and be something that you can stand next to and be proud of. I think that there are some people that have that, and it would be the same thing when they were a little kid and they built a Lego or something, and if that's in their blood somewhere, there's a better chance that they'll be happy in the trades. Or maybe they are, if they're super detailed, they might be a great hydronics, CAD designer or something different that's related as well, that's just as important. But yeah, there's no perfect answer to that question, I don't think.
Yeah, I can speak for myself. Looking back, when I was first introduced to, when I was an apprentice and I was working professionally in the trades, I can look back and remember very clearly, and because I've retold this to friends of mine and apprentices that have worked with or for me, I chose to pursue and learn as much as I possibly could about hydronics specifically. Radiant floor heating, especially at the time, that was very common in the new construction business. The company I worked for, large shop, did huge high-end custom homes, and every one of them would get a heated floors in the construction boom. And I was one of one or two apprentices at this big 30-40 man shop that I was working at that showed any interest in learning this. And for me, it was it's kind of silly looking back, really, but it was because nobody else was wanting to learn it. And I thought, well, if I learned this in addition to what I was going to have to learn regardless, I mean, I was going to become a licensed plumber as long as that was my plan at the time. And I was going to work as a plumber. But I knew that if I could increase my skill set by learning something like radiant heating, then I was more marketable. So for me, I was already in the trades when I started learning, boiler systems and radiant heating. But it was not because I thought it was cool, but because I thought this was going to make me more marketable down the road.
And I think that, in my last job, when I would drive around and meet with contractors all over Colorado, there were a handful, probably 10 or 20 guys in the state that were excellent. And it wasn't because they were born with, that knowledge in their head. It was because they were nerds about what they were working on, and they wanted to know about the new boiler, and they wanted to figure out why the control is doing this, not just the A connects to A, B connects to B, and then I go home. It was that, desire to make it better and to figure out what the next step is, and to kind of push the limits of what the technology available has to offer and use the most of the upcoming stuff. And I think that is fun. I think that there are people that from any background could find that challenge interesting and fun and rewarding, and a big part of our future as a country, to be able to save so much energy on a task like that. So I think that, I don't know how you find those people, but I think that challenge is something that at least lets people sink their teeth into.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not for everyone. I know I've worked with and had people working under me that are very content with the idea that they're going to install this basic plumbing system, whether, waste and vent and water distribution on a house or on a commercial job, and they understand that and they take pride in that, and they're okay with, just kind of following the rules, and this is how it's done, and moving on to the next job after. They are okay with that. But we also need those people too.
Yeah, and there may be, that person probably works at Facebook too, and there's someone who is pretty good at what they do, and they don't really want to get out of their comfort zone, and they'll do that until they retire, and that's fine, I guess, too. So
yeah, exactly.
So how would we, as far as the emerging technology go, how would we make hydronics better in a world where boilers are already 95% efficient? I mean, even if we got to 99.9% efficient boilers, how do we make the hydronics trade an exponential leap better?
Wow, you asked some of the best questions I've ever got to take part in. So for me, I personally, in my opinion, is that our systems, when they're installed correctly and they're tuned, and people have taken all the steps necessary, whether it's to check the combustion efficiency on a boiler and on a gas boiler, and have it running at optimal parameters, or to apply the right technology for the scope of the job, whether it's a small combi boiler, producing domestic hot water and heat for hydronics, space heating. All of that, once all of that's in place, I think we look at in my opinion, the simple fact that our systems are efficient enough. I think where we need to make improvements overall is making maybe a combination of these systems be more simple to install and to diagnose and service in their operation, and repeatable. So I think what we have in our industry are, you talked about it just a minute ago, people that are very, very skilled and want to improve and use the latest technology, and all of that's very important to them, and that's how they run their business, or that's how they operate as an employee, and that's very important. But I think what we're creating, and a lot of times in these mechanical rooms, are very, very complicated heating systems, heating and cooling systems, and this could be said about a lot of the trades, a lot of the crafts out there, but ours in specific, we open a door to a boiler room, and it looks like maybe something that NASA built. and I've been a proponent, and I don't maybe have all of the solutions in place, but I've been a proponent of making these systems more simple so that we could make them repeatable. I think that 2,500 square foot home of any style, if it has hydronic heating in it, does not need to look like the back room of the control room of a Boeing 747.
Yeah.
It just, I think that the simple design of let's say in comparison, a forced air heating system, the simple fact that it looks like an appliance, and there are just a couple parts and pieces connected to an air handling furnace, that it's really relatively easy to understand if you're not a professional in that trade. So it's maybe it is oftentimes I've been told that it's more desirable because it doesn't seem as complicated. It doesn't seem as if forced air heating system were to break down, that I'm going to have to find the most highly technically trained person I possibly could in my area to take a crack at fixing it and be successful. And I see a lot of boiler rooms that are, hey, I go in and service a large part of my business is fixing and servicing systems that other people have installed. And I've spent hours trying to understand just,
what the intent was, yeah.
Yeah, just what was already installed and think of, and then I could turn that around and tell you, in 5 minutes how I could make it, how I maybe would have done it to be so much more simple. So I think overcomplicating the systems is really one of our biggest problems. And I think our challenge should be not to look at maybe the efficiency we're already at. I don't see that going away and only getting better, but how we can design a hydronic system to be more simple and, utilizing the efficiencies that we have, not giving anything up necessarily, but using the technology we have and just simplifying it. I see a lot of that in Europe right now, but those systems maybe we're not building the same types of systems here in North America, but I see some boilers and piping in a room in maybe a European household that looks a lot more simple than what I see in some of the houses here. And I can understand both of them, but I can't quite wrap my head around why we see so many complicated systems here.
Yeah, and I think that, like you're saying, with the diagnosing the issue part of it, I mean, my car, if it seems like the error messages that it can throw are so specific and so helpful that if we had some sort of plain English code that came up on a screen that said, hey, that check valve has, a marble stuck in it, I mean, it would be hard to get that specific.
Sure,
but to say, like, this specific component is broken and here's what's broken, that would be a pretty cool thing, because then we get closer to the making it more like an appliance that, your refrigerator tells you that the ice maker is jammed. If the same code could come up on a boiler system, I think that would be helpful and would help really build trust for the trades too, that if a homeowner sees that, this pump is broken and it's, it isn't spinning anymore, okay, now I understand that we might need to replace that pump instead of just taking the technician's word for it. But that's probably a big platform that someone could design, and that would be a fun thing to have, I guess.
I think it would be. You bring up you kind of spurred a thought when you brought up the refrigerator telling you the ice maker's broken. Our hydronic systems, our heating and cooling, none of that. I mean, we experience that because we know whether we're warm or cold in our house and whether it should be warm or cold in the house, whether we have hot water when we take a shower, etc. With a refrigerator, freezer, for example, great example, we interact with that appliance. If we go to fill a cup of, if we go to fill a cup of ice and fill it with water, and no ice comes out or the water doesn't, is just a trickle, we know something's wrong, and we can, pretty reasonably understand that, oh, well, this is broken. With a heating system, when they're complicated, when there are just hundreds of pipes and components on a wall and the house is, relatively, any scale house, to be honest with you, or any scale building, when it looks complicated, it must be, right?
Yeah.
And it's just harder to understand, and we don't have that. We're not going down there every day to physically turn on a pump to, and then benefiting from the heat that comes through those lines. It's just all automatic. And if we could get some kind of, that's a great concept, just some way to make a uniform, interaction between, whether it's an error code or whether something is working right as it is. I mean, people might want both sets of knowledge there, but that's a cool concept.
Well, hopefully we've got if we have the same phone call in 10 years, we can report back with with breakthroughs in this type of technology. I've got a couple bonus rounds, some lightning round questions for you. So if your truck was on fire and you could only grab one tool, what would it be?
Well, assuming my iPhone's in my pocket, I'd have to say my tool bag. That thing, I mean, I can replace every impact driver and, press tool or whatever it is. I can replace a torch. But that tool bag, that may be the one single tool that is chock full of the most valuable tools I own. I mean,
Yeah.
some of these tools that we buy are very, task specific, like a press tool, and they're not inexpensive, thousands of dollars, or a PEX expander or something like that. But my tool bag allows me to use all those other tools and to do it efficiently. So I'd say my tool bag.
Okay, that works. And like you said, the iPhone is probably the one that's going to get somebody to come rescue you at the job site when your truck's on fire. So that'd probably be the first step.
I don't know. I personally don't have any friends that could live without their phone. So in this day and age, so I'd say that's probably number one. But let's just assume it's in my pocket.
Okay, that works. And then my last question, I ask this to everybody: who's your favorite teacher and why?
I probably learned so much from everyone around me. I'd have to say that I've attended a lot of great classes with some, and every instructor I've had teaching that class I think is great. John Siegenthaler, John Barba, Hot Rod, and others. But I'd say probably my most valuable teachers are the techs, the guys and gals that have installed systems maybe incorrectly or had a misunderstanding of what they were doing, and I'm there to fix the problem. I think I learn the most from them every single day.
Yeah, just from the good and the bad in the flesh.
Yeah. I honestly, maybe that maybe it's too generic. Maybe I'm not trying to bow out on naming one person, because I have been to a lot of training, and I've liked and disliked some of the information or how it was presented. But honestly, I can't pick one person. But I'd say, like I said, I learned a lot from the people that came before me.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a good source of training if your eyes are open and you're paying attention to, okay, what were they trying to do here? How can I do that better? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no worries. And you can see more from Eric and other contractors on the pro staff at mechanical-hub.com. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to see their tool reviews and keep up with the latest industry news.
To find REHAU technical training, go to na.rehau.com/academy and check out REHAU America's YouTube channel. Our Twitter handle is @REHAU, and you can always ask your sales rep for more information about local trainings.